I think we can look at it with ourselves where it's like the goal is not to avoid the fire. The beauty is to realize you're fireproof.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rise, Recover, Live, the podcast. I am your host, Bryce III, and this is my wonderful co-host, Liz. What up, Liz?
Hey, you're pretty wonderful yourself.
You know, I try. So today it is just us. This is a solo episode, and we will be throwing around some topics that we thought may be valuable to just have conversation around out loud and in the public. But first and foremost, Liz, how's your energy today?
My energy is surprisingly pretty chill. Like it's been an unexpected kind of day because it was supposed to be a really busy day. We had a few recordings scheduled that we ended up rescheduling, and because things just work out the way they're supposed to. And in the past, I've been somebody who's not rolled with changes very well, and so it's funny. These are the moments that I'm able to kind of sit back and be like, hey, look at that. I'm not freaking out. It's great. So my energy right now is not freaking out. And that in itself is a beautiful thing.
It is beautiful. I believe that it is like that's a practice to allow for life to be what it is and not melt down if it doesn't go how it is that we plan for it to go. And these are definitely skills that I learned in recovery and just intentional living, like learning to show up and allow what is to be exactly what it is. And a lot of times, like I might have an idea of how things should work out, and what ends up happening is how things actually work out tend to be most times better than how I had planned them to work out, but I couldn't conceive with my limited viewpoint because like it had never worked out like this, because if it had worked out like I planned, it would have looked totally different, so, but yeah, oftentimes rolling with the punches has brought me to so many like cool places, to meet so many cool people, and to be such in a cool stance, like a cool mood. It's almost like kung fu, like it's a stance to allow life to be what it is. Like,
so I guess my energy is kind of kung fu today. Yeah,
there you go.
Kung it is. Fu, I agree. It's for me. It's like I look at. No, it's not even about looking back at the times that I've, not been chill and needed to control everything, because that time will happen again, probably later today. It's not like that's something that I'm past or something. It's who I am. But the arrogance of it is what always makes me laugh at myself, to think that like, first of all, that I have any control. And then also to think that if I did what I would plan, would be right, and everything else is not right. Because what you said is so true, that like the thing that ends up happening is, it's the only way it could be. So that's the way it was supposed to be. And it does end up being better, because look at where we are right now on these microphones, talking to these amazing people. And I just, never could have planned this.
Nope. Never could have planned it. Never could have planned that I would have got here. Never could have planned that I would have been in a position that I'm in. Never could have planned that I would have met so many, cool people. Like if I had it my way, I probably wouldn't even have ended up here, because I would have been working in my limited understanding. And such is life, like, and such is the evolvement, like the evolution of our understanding. When we roll with the punches, we cultivate wisdom, because now we're living life on life's terms. And I think you mentioned something, the arrogance or like the ego is like, if things would just go this way. But I think the trick to get into like wisdom, to like ease into that position of kung fu and allowing life to be what it is like how you said that's what makes me laugh at myself. And humor, I found, is like the gateway to understanding. like learning to chuckle versus, cause like I come from like, and I'm breaking everything. And like, if things would have just went high, and so to go from that and then to where like things just, and it's just like, what can I do? What can I do but show up? And what can I do but laugh at how I thought things would have worked out? And that laughter, that humor oftentimes is like my gateway or my crutch that allowed like my on-ramp to like understanding, which, allows me to cultivate wisdom in the circumstance.
Yeah. Well, it's a release. I mean, laughter is just laughter and, tears. Like it's a release, and that like within that release is always going to be surrender, which is just the opposite of that feeling of like, let me clench my fists, let me make this work exactly how I'm going to make it work, and get so angry if it doesn't. Because I've had the same experience when the release has been tears, where you go from just being like, I'm going to control this, in the past it'd be like, I'm going to control this, and I'm also going to reach for a substance that's going to make me not feel it anymore, versus like, actually I just gotta let it go. And whether it's going to be, I'm going to laugh or I'm going to cry, it's like, it's just, I'm not holding on. I'm not holding it up anymore, and that's when all of a sudden you realize like, oh damn, I could have put it down a long time ago. I've been carrying this heavy thing.
Yeah. You're truly evolved when you're laughing and crying at the same time. Then you hit a whole nother level where it's like, I don't even know what is going on, but I'm allowed everything to happen at the same time. And I think another thing you had said was the linear thought process, like thinking that growth is from point A to point B. And just recently in my personal meditation practice, that has been kind of like one of those things that have really been a stick out in the integration of showing up for life. Because in my practice, it's like, we're so used to like, okay, well, I started here at A, and then, give it a couple of months and then I'll be here at B, and then give it a couple of more months and I'll be here at C. And like in meditation, it's like there's nowhere to go, and there's not necessarily a way to quantify the progress besides allowing for the experience. And today's practice might feel a bit regressed because maybe my mind is a little bit busier today, and if I'm using point A to point B, then I can look at it like, oh, well, I've gone backwards. Like, what's going on? But it's like, another thing I've noticed is over time, I've been practicing for some years, and I've hit this understanding in my life where it's like the culmination of the practice in a whole, not necessarily being like linear, going up, but I have a sensitivity and skills that I wouldn't have had I not been practicing for this time. But it hasn't been linear. There's been times where I've been up and under, like really tapped in. There's been times where I've been like not aware and just really pulled by, obsession and craving. And this is in recovery. And such is life, where it's like today in recovery as a person, I might experience feelings similar to the second day that I was in recovery. Like, that doesn't mean that I have regressed or that I'm not making progress. That is just an indication of the nonlinear aspects of recovery. Like it's not A to B and B to C. It's like we are all over the place, but what that requires is for us to show up. And, the showing up, the practice of showing up over and over and over again for ourselves and for life on life's terms is what allows for us to build this thing out, build the skills and the wisdom that allows for us to like be in recovery, practice recovery. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Yeah. I think it's the word that keeps coming up for me is trust. I think for others, it might be faith. And it's just trusting that journey. And it's just knowing that even the days where you think there's like a beginning, middle, and an end, that there's just not, that, and whatever is on the other side of that next door, whatever is, that next step forward is, it just is like, and then that's not something that you need to or can control. And like, we only have so many things that we actually have a say in. And, you know, I think that's a big part of why one day at a time works for so many people on this journey. You know, 12 steps, not not part of my story, but it's part of Bryce's story, but it's still something that it's been in my vernacular. It's definitely something that when you start jumping to the next step, to the next step, to the next step, to just come back and realize that, you know, I'm here right now. I'm okay right now. You know, my one job in this moment is maybe just to take the next breath, or maybe it's to, you know, I don't even know. Maybe it's just to just be still. I feel like I've gotten a lot of that kind of message lately, to just maybe pause.
No, that's important. And I think I too have been kind of receiving that message through my experience. And I mean, even being in 12 step and hearing things like one day at a time, like it can be cliche until we practice it. Another one that's similar to that is like, how do you eat an elephant? You know, and most people would be like, you don't. Why would you eat elephants in the first place? Like, who's the last person who had an elephant steak? But people who aren't smartasses would say, you know, I don't know. How would you eat an elephant? And I would say, one bite at a time. And it's so many things that we look to achieve. I mean, especially like coming into recovery, you know, we want everything back. We want the relationships with our family and friends back. We want to be trusted. We want people to be able to depend on us. We want a car. We want money. We want to do work that speaks to our spirit. We want like all of these things. And that can be, I think it was shared on the Chris Spallina podcast, that episode where he was saying like, you know, I would get a little bit of time, and then the anxiety is around like the credit card debt, and anxiety is around like, you know, the path ahead, like all of the big path in front of me, like would send me back out. Like, you know, this is too much, and you will go back out. And so my personal finance coach actually used the train analogy, and Abraham Hicks uses the train analogy, where it's like, if a train is going 200 miles an hour in one direction, and we're looking to go make a 180 and go in the opposite direction, in order to get that train to go in the opposite direction, it isn't going to go automatically go 200 miles in the other direction. Like, it's going to be a slowing down of the train, and then we're going to slowly make our way to going in the opposite direction. And that slowing down of the train, that may be, you know, metaphorically, like things like relapse, or things like mirroring some of our old behaviors, because it's our nature, because we've been going 200 miles an hour in that direction for so long, you know. But what we can tend to do is not have compassion for our process. And it's like, oh man, I messed up. What is wrong with me? Like, why can't I just get it right? And it's like, of course, like this was your experience, because that was your nature. You've been going this way for 200 miles an hour for so long. Like, have compassion for your process, and know that even though this is not representation of where you know that you want to be, you are still slowing down the train, so you can begin moving the train in the opposite direction. And eventually, over time, you know, atomic habits, we continue to compound our habits. We continue to practice in the day, in this moment, right now, like what is a reflection of who it is that we want to be. And eventually we get the train moving in the opposite direction, and then it begins speeding up. And then before you know it, you look around, it's like, oh snap, like people depend on me. People call me when it's time for, you know, people to hold money, or, you know, people to watch the baby, or, you know, people to show up and be on time. Like, people call me for that. And it's like, you know, the cool thing about recovery is we've been on both sides of the track. So it still to this day amazes me that people think to invite me. like 9 years. I'm coming up on 9 years next week. And there was a time where it was like people would hide the fact that things were going on from Bryce, because we don't want Bryce to just pop in, because he's going to crash everything. And now I get invites, and it's like, it just touches my heart and my little soul. Like, oh my God, like you want me there, and it's beautiful.
That's amazing. Oh, well, if I was a person that threw parties, I'd invite you to every single one of them. Your train analogy made me think, well, like the slowing down part, because you mentioned relapse as one of the things that sometimes can be the thing that slows you down, that, starts to help you turn direction. I think not even the further you get along, because like we said, it's not linear. Like when you're in a place where you're really being honest with yourself and listening, not doing so much of the outward, trying to control things, but really allowing yourself to just like be still and see what's going on the inside. Sometimes you can see those little breaks that are happening, those little slowdowns, or those little just like signals that you're getting from yourself or around you, that maybe there is something that's happening. Maybe the train is starting to turn courses, but maybe you don't need it to crash. Like, I know in the past for me, it would be, like I would start to be like, all right, I'm getting really, really crazy busy. I'm starting to feel really anxious. I'm not sleeping very well. I'm finding myself not showing up in my relationships the same way. And then all of a sudden it's like, how did this bottle get in my hand again? And it was like, well, actually there was a lot of smoke before that fire happened. And I think it's so the further even that we get along in recovery, it's so important to continue to pay attention to those things, that, it's not, you're not all better, like it's not you haven't, reached your destination. I know personally, last night I had a drinking dream, and I haven't had one of those in a really long time. And those usually come up for me when there is something that maybe I need to pay attention to that I'm not paying attention to. And it doesn't, I don't have the reaction that I once did, where it's like, oh my God, that means this train is going right off the tracks. Like it's a sign, like, here we go, I'm thinking about it again. And it's like, no, that's just kind of where my subconscious goes when it's like something, it feels hard or scary, or like there's something in me that's not being listened to. So it's just like my little signal to kind of look around and be like, all right, well, where have I stopped? Where have I stopped, taking care of myself? Like, am I sleeping very well? And the answer is no. Like, am I making sure that I have, like healthy food every single day? And am I like taking breaks? And those things aren't really happening. So I'm listening to that, because I don't mind if the train turns around, but I would really not going to let it crash again.
I think like that's the process.
Yeah.
Like that's the practice. Mm-hmm. And I think like that's the beauty in it. Like there's no destination for real. Like it's the practice of showing up and being receptive to what it is that we need in whatever moment. And the thing about time, I used to negate the importance of time, because I come from where like you'll have somebody that's 70 years old, but it still had a mindset of a 13-year-old. And it's like, but people are like, respect your elders and respect your OGs. And it's like, bro, is tripping. So just because you older than me don't mean nothing. So like when I was coming up, I used to be like, age don't mean nothing. But now, having had some experience with intentional living, I see the importance of time, because time allows for us to have experiences. And in recovery, the time in recovery, because I can also negate the importance of time in recovery, because, we can get to saying, oh, I got 9 years, I got 8 years. And it starts to be about this number. Mm-hmm. And we can begin to lean upon the work that we've done. But yesterday's work is not going to sustain me today. Like the work I did an hour ago is not going to sustain me right mm-hmm. now. I got to continue to practice. It's important for us to have the experience in time, because that gives us multiple opportunities to experience different contexts of life. And in those different contexts, in those different circumstances, whether it be somebody dying, whether it be something getting stole, or whether it being a success, whether it be peace, there's this thing that I'm going through in this season of life right now where like there's nothing to worry about. And it's interesting. It's almost like the person who, has credit card debt and like thousands of dollars of credit card debt, and then pays off his credit card debt through years of diligence. And then to celebrate paying off his credit card debt, it's like, man, I need something to celebrate. And he goes and takes a loan out on a boat.
Yeah.
It's like that thing where it's like, oh, like I don't know how to be content. I don't know what contentment is. And this is the myriad I think that's the word, of experiences that we can have in recovery, because there's so many experiences to have, and only time allows for those experiences. So just as you shared, like, you had to have the experience of, oh, I'm tired, or, oh, I'm not sleeping well, or, oh, I've had a drinking dream, and this is what this has meant previously. Like, to have the context to know, like, this is how I need to show up for myself when that happens. And then new things happen. And then it's like, yo, I have no idea. So we have tools that we built, whether it's listening to a podcast, whether it's going to a meeting, whether it's getting around other people that are on a similar path as us, whether it's going to a Phoenix program, whether it's calling our mentor, whether it's calling our coach, whatever tools we've built, whether it's reading, whether it's meditating, whatever tools we've built, we can lean upon those in times where we don't know exactly what to do, because this is the first time we've been exposed to this context in life. And then we live through it, get on the other side of it, get through it, experience it without picking up a drink or a drug or using something externally. And then what ends up happening is we cultivate wisdom that sustains us moving forward. So next time we come across something similar to this, it's like, oh, I know that when I have drinking dreams, this is how I need to show up for myself. I know that when I'm tired like this, I'm burnt out because I haven't been getting any sleep. So this is how I need to show up for myself. And now that becomes a tool as well. So everything, and I say all this to say that there is no wrong. There is no wrong. Every part of our experience serves us in a way that allows for us to continue to show up better for ourselves.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think it comes back to that trust too, because then, I'm like, my little brain in there is trusting that if they send this smoke signal out, then, I'll go and make sure I got a fire extinguisher handy. And, we start to trust that we can get through the hard things, because it is really scary the first few times in recovery when something big happens and you've never, ever, again, whether it's good or bad, I've never celebrated without drinking. I've never grieved without drinking. And I think it's, Glennon Doyle talks about this when it comes to parenting, but I think we can look at it with ourselves, where it's like the goal is not to avoid the fire. The beauty is to realize you're fireproof. Is that you can get through it. And right. I know. It's so good. And, teaching, she talks about it in like teaching your children that, and not trying to constantly protect them from everything, but like, helping them to trust them and trusting themselves that they can get through it. And I think we can do that for ourselves, because we didn't all learn that. And we certainly didn't, step into life and hard things with that knowledge. So showing that to yourself and proving it just by waking up the next day over and over again is how you find out you're fireproof.
Fireproof. Yeah. That's the name of this episode. We are fireproof. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, you said there was smoke before there was that fire. And when you used that analogy earlier, it's like, yeah, like anytime I crash and burn, like I can look back and see in hindsight, like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I smelled it. Well, and do you ever do the thing? This is the thing that I've done over and over again too, where we're so used to looking outside of ourselves that it's like, I will smell the smoke. Like, I use the fire analogy a lot when it comes to everything, but I'll smell the smoke. Like, I'm looking around and I'm like, man, I am just struggling and I'm tired. And I feel like I'm showing it, but apparently I'm not, because nobody is saying anything. And I'm kind of looking around and everybody else is proceeding as if everything's fine. And so I'm like, all right, well, I guess it's okay. Like, nobody else is telling me that I need to slow down. Nobody else is giving me permission to go take a nap or take a day off, or nobody else, has mentioned that my drinking is an issue, things like that. And so it's like, all right, well, I smell the smoke, but if nobody else does, then, it must be okay. And then before you know it, it's like, well, crap, now I'm trapped in this burning building, and all the time, like, I had the power to give myself permission. I had the power to be like, hey, everybody, there's a fire, like I am the only one who could, save myself, or at least just notice and be okay with saying out loud that something is not right and making a change. And, maybe this burning building's okay for you, but it's not okay for me. And I can get out of it because, I am fireproof, but I'd rather not be in a burning building. My metaphors really collided right there.
I'd rather not be on fire. I mean, but even like to keep the metaphor going, it's like your house being on fire and starting to burn, and you looking like at the person that lives in a corner house to like tell you that, okay, yeah, you should probably get out the crib. It's like, it's my house.
That's my job.
You know, and to bring it back, like, a big thing very early on with me that I was taught when I first got around was like some things I didn't know how to do. So like I didn't know how, like I was so used to just lying and just, you know, off the cuff, not telling the truth about things and having to pretend to belong in rooms and having to pretend like I knew things and that I didn't know how to do anything else. And so something was told to me very early on was to practice the opposite. I was like, okay, well, we'll see how that goes. So it's like, usually in this circumstance, like I would lie and, but let's see what happens when I don't. And it just became like this new energy. And, you know, part of that is because like, I could lie to you right now and you wouldn't tell me, oh, why are you lying? Because you wouldn't know, like, but I know. And I'm the person who has to walk around with the fact that I know that I told this lie. And there's a story that happened. I don't know how early it was but we all have those defining moments in our recovery that like kind of paved the way for the rest of our recovery. And this story like was really like one of the big ones for me. Me and my sister, we went to go see J. Cole, his Forest Hills Drive tour, which was like his biggest album up to that point. And so we go see the concert. Afterwards, we go to Buffalo Wild Wings and we out there in a stick somewhere. And so we go eat, come out in the parking lot. And then me and my sister, we like to play around a lot and stuff. So we was playing like, I don't even know how to describe the game. So excuse me as I tried to describe the game. We was playing like tag back, where it's like, I pop you, and if you don't get me back, like I win. So it's like boop, and then you can't touch me. And if you don't touch me, I'm still the winner. And so, but she's like, she can be obsessive. So like, if I pop her back, she got to get me back, and we'll be going at it until she get me back. So we're playing Get Back. We never even named it. I'm just like describing it, and it's like, I guess that's what it's called. So we playing Get Back in the parking lot, and boop, I got her. Boop, she got me. Boop, I got her. Boop, she got me. Boop, I got her. And then she chasing after me. And so like, I'm the backwards man. I'm the backwards man. I can run backwards fast as you can. And so like, I'm running backwards and she can't catch, I'm dusting her, right? Like I hit the burners. She can't get me, right? And so in my mind, this was a big learning point for me in my life. Because in my mind, I'm like, you know, I displace responsibility. I'm like, if there's something behind me, she's going to tell me there's something behind me before I run into something. Like, so I trust her to tell me that something's behind me before, you know, I run into something. So I'm like, I'm looking in her eyes, like she can't get me. I'm seeing the frustration in her eyes, but I'm also looking in her eyes for her to tell me like, yo,
stop.
Like there's something behind you, like slow down. Yeah. But she was so obsessed with tapping me back. She's like a pit bull with her jaws on the fact that she just wanted to tap me back that I guess she didn't notice it neither. And I bumped straight into a car. Ow. Boosh. And when I bumped, I hit my back first. Ooh. And then my elbows recoiled and my elbow went through the window, broke the window. I'm like, first thing I said is, first thing came out of my mouth, it was almost like a knee-jerk reaction. First thing came out of my mouth was, we gotta go.
Wait, but did she get you? Did she boop you back? So did she win? That's my question.
Right.
I don't know. I'm the big sister too. I'm like, so win.
So I'm like, we gotta go. So I run. I get in the car. My kid's mom was in the car at the time. And she's like, what are y'all doing? What's going on? I'm like, it doesn't matter. We just out of here. So I pull out the parking lot. We did. We down the street. And I get about a quarter mile down the street. And I'm like, we gotta go back. And so I turn the car around. Now this is recovery in action, because previously, it's like, I don't care who that, like, ain't nobody never gonna know what happened or what, like, you know, I'm put myself in danger. Like, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning at a Buffalo Wild Wings. Only people there at Buffalo Wild Wings is drunk or they drunk. And so I'm like, we gotta go back. So I turn around, I go in this Buffalo Wild Wings, this bar, and then I go inside and I'm like, yo, does anybody own a Dodge Caliber that is just out there in the parking lot? I broke the window.
Are you like actively bleeding right now too? Like, is your elbow?
So first of all, I didn't know that I could bust through a window like that. It was crazy. I was living off of pure adrenaline. I don't even know. No, and my elbow was straight. It was sore the next day, but you could literally just bust a car window with your elbow Superman. And be okay. At least if you're me, right? So I'm asking people like, whose car is this? Whose car is this? And crazy enough, nobody know whose car it was. So I left my number and like, look, if you could, whoever car this is, just let them know. Give me a call. They gave me a call the next day. Turns out it was an older couple. They got a little too drunk and had their son come pick them up. And so they left the car there in the parking lot that night. And they were like, we were surprised that anybody would even call us. Like, we are taken aback. And they ended up going and getting it appraised. And then they was like, just give us half of what the appraisal is, man. Don't worry about it. Thank you for calling and thank you for woo. But recovery was in action there because I was practicing the opposite. And it's like those moments, those instances of like allowing for the practice and practicing the opposite. And even if you're scared, don't know how it's going to turn out, we know how it turned out the other way. We know what it's like to lie. And nobody might have never known, what happened that night but me. And now I got to walk around in life carrying the fact that I broke somebody's window and I didn't tell them, I didn't let them know. And so my house would have been burning, but nobody else would have known that my house was burning, but I'm still in a burning house. You see what I'm saying? And so that's kind of how recovery works. Like, no matter where we go, there we are. So like in instances like that, we begin to take responsibility. Or for me, like walking around with these, what we call ghosts or burdens or resentments, on our back, it's going to cause me to drink because I can't live with it because it becomes heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. You're never, who is it that said this? You're never by yourself. You're with yourself. So like, it's not, you always are going to have that part of you inside that's going to be like, why didn't you talk about it? Why didn't you say it? It's never just going to be quiet. You can't shut that part of yourself off. I mean, we all have that off switch that nearly killed us, but that's really powerful. Doing the right thing when nobody's watching or you don't necessarily like have to, or you can get away with it. I feel like that's like there should be a chip for that. For the first time you do that, because I do feel like that's a powerful, like that is a thing that happens that clicks.
I think it is
really?
a chip, and I think well, so not like an external chip, but I think it's an internal chip. I think once we begin to do that, like that is where real recovery begins, and that's a chip that only we know that we got, and that's like the beginning of the journey of like not needing validation from external sources, just like we wouldn't need, something to alter our mood. Like, but validation is a mood alterer too. Like I would do things so you could see it that I did them, not because I'm a good person, but because like I need you to see that I'm a good person.
Dopamine hit.
Like, oh wait, look, you see what I'm doing? You see what I'm doing? I'm the best guy in the world, huh? But like now, I pick up trash off the ground. My neighbor's flowers fell yesterday and I straightened them up and it's just cool knowing to myself like, oh, I'm this guy. And because we live in a world of which we see, like the world we see is a reflection of who it is that we are. Like now I live in a world where if my flowers fall over, maybe somebody will pick them up because I live in a world where people do that. Maybe somebody will say hello or good morning to me, or maybe somebody will ask me how my energy is, or maybe somebody will show up when I need them, or maybe somebody will lend me some money, or maybe somebody will, take care of my kid if I get too stressed. Maybe somebody will call me today and check on me because that's the energy that I give out. And I don't give it out because I need that back. I give it out because I'd like to live in that world. Definitely.
Or even knowing that that's happening when it has nothing to do with you, like that's why I think whenever we hear one of those news stories where somebody helped another person. I can't even think of one off the top of my head, but those like feel good stories where they're like this stray dog or whatever, this person who didn't have anything themselves, they rescued this dog and then this next good thing happened. And it's just like kind things happening in the world have a ripple effect and help us all just believe, like you said, in a kinder world. And that's just a safe feeling to know that there's just goodness and kindness around you. Maybe that's our call to action here for this episode. This unexpected conversation of an episode is to, do something nice that nobody else is going to know about.
I'm going to let Liz speak for herself because I entirely, absolutely 100% expected that this would be the nature of our conversations every time. Let me tell you all, like, I know you all have gotten to know us as like hosts, but like ultimately, like, we're good friends. And the conversations that we have when the camera isn't rolling are just as substantial as this. And, we pour into each other. And so it's such a privilege to be able to share these conversations with you all, because I know these are conversations that we could all benefit from, and take some gems and apply it to our lives and use it to be able to show up and have compassion for ourselves and become more receptive to learning when to smell the smoke.
Right. When to get out of that building. I agree. I love our conversations. The amount of times we've had great conversations and Bryce has been like, you didn't hit record. It's been a lot of times we've learned our lesson. But also I think the cool thing, the thing that brought me to the Phoenix is that we're this peer-to-peer organization, right? There's no like, oh, I know how to do this, so I'm going to tell you how to do this, or, you're answering to me, or, this group of people is helping this group of people. Like, we're all in it together. And I think if you are able to take that away from all the conversations that we have, is that, there's nothing that we're talking about that, you don't have just as valid and valuable, wisdom to share. Everybody's experience is so powerful and helpful to other people. So it's just an unbelievable honor and a gift to be able to be behind this microphone and talk about our experiences. And my gosh, even more so for folks to come on and trust us with theirs. But if you ever feel called to share your experience, do it. Like, whether that is, in the mirror, because that's where it starts, or like with another person, like, go out and talk about this stuff because you are wise.
And with that, I think that's a wrap on this episode. We appreciate your listenership. Make sure that you go subscribe to the podcast. The way the podcasts work is when you subscribe, it might feed into the algorithm. I know ratings and reviews do too on Apple Podcasts, but subscribing at the very least promises that you'll get these episodes downloaded to your phone so you can continue to be a part of these conversations.
Yeah. Grateful for every single person that's here. Grateful for you, Bryce. Thanks for being my friend.
Ditto. I am so proud of you, and I'm proud to know you, and I'm proud of us as a team, and I'm proud of you all, the listeners, for using tools such as this podcast to continue to further your understanding and compassion and the way that you show up for yourself.
Likewise, and ditto. And we'll see you next time.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you, or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.